NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble! Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
The Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin, Frazier, DKM, and J Cal.
What up, everybody? This is the season finale of the Alliance Guys podcast. And with me tonight, of course, is our good pal, confidant, and longtime friend, Mr. DKM. And also joining us is one of the original Alliance Guys, the mysterious Mr. Jaden. Jaden, welcome to the show. DK, how are you?
How am I? Didn't know that we had seasons.
Yeah. Well, you don't watch the video on YouTube, do you?
Heck no. I'm part of this. Why would I watch it?
Well, guys, I'm here for a reason, not for a season. And I'm glad we're actually doing this a day early and not having to have me and DK have to take over the show tomorrow, because we killed the last Alliance Guys being together.
That's true.
You did. Yes, you did. Who was the guest? Was that Fordell Walker?
That was Fordell Walker, and that was a lot of fun.
He wasn't going to talk about something, but then did anyway.
What's that?
He wasn't going to talk about something, but then did anyway.
Well, you know, we all get stuff like that going sometimes.
Not me. I say whatever comes to my mind. That's why I always get in trouble.
You have zero filter. That's the thing about Jaden, in which we appreciate and also scares the living crap out of us, is you never know exactly what Jaden's going to say. DKM and I are a little bit more calculated with what we say. There is no censor on our pal Jaden.
None.
That's why I'm the most entertaining.
That is true. So what are we talking about on this great night of greatness that we're running up against AEW, and probably all our fans are somewhere else?
Yeah, well, look, if people prefer to watch live entertainment, live pro wrestling over this podcast, well,
No, you had it right the first time. Live entertainment, not pro wrestling.
Are we just calling it all sports entertainment now? Is that what it is?
Well,
That's what it is.
I mean, most of it is. It's very hard to find pro wrestling anymore. Although
No, it isn't. That's what YouTube's for. I find all kinds of pro wrestling on YouTube, at least old stuff. Modern stuff, I find a lot of that too, but I wouldn't call that pro wrestling.
AEW's had a couple of good matches. I mean, I watched the 1 hour draw with Brian Danielson.
You got it right.
Adam Page. And I had to think too to get it right. And I thought that was a really good match. I love the fact that it was a draw. Most people hated it, but I loved it. And
well, I mean, we're here tonight because we're a couple of chuckleheads who have spent the last couple of years talking about the NWA. We'll be talking about mostly the NWA, but don't be surprised if we spill into other wrestling promotions like MLW or the United Wrestling Network, AEW, or Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. We like all kinds of pro wrestling. We're not limited to just one particular brand. Although this show, normally we focus on recapping NWA Powerrr. This episode, this finale, if you will, we're going to spend some time talking about the NWA as it was in 2021. Because as we were kind of discussing this on the Alliance Guys, on the pre-party, the podcast that happens on Tuesdays before the NWA Powerrr, this was actually a pretty good year for the NWA. And I have some notes if you guys would like to hear that. But, there's some things that really were positive this year for the National Wrestling Alliance. Booking be damned, they did a lot this year. And we'll get to that momentarily. We're also going to talk about some of our favorite moments that happened this year in pro wrestling. And of course, we want to hear your guys' thoughts too. So, I'm looking at the chat and I see our pals, Terry McDermott's in the house. Dodie is here. And anybody else that wants to jump in, join in, make sure you just put a comment in the chat. We'll get to that momentarily. But I think the first thing I'd like to talk about, and if you guys don't mind me just being long-winded here, is that for every year that the NWA has been owned by Billy Corgan, this is an interesting statistic. They've introduced a new championship or brought one back. In 1 year, they actually did it twice. So, like in 2017, Billy Corgan buys the NWA, and of course, now we have this national spotlight on Tim Storm, where the United Wrestling Network's Championship Wrestling from Hollywood was showcasing Tim. Also, the 10 Pounds of Gold on YouTube was really showcasing the world's heavyweight champion. And then fast forward to 2018, where they have the NWA 70th anniversary show. We get a new NWA National Championship that's introduced back to the brand. And, of course, they bring Jazz back, who was the Women's World Champion. So they seemingly introduced both championship titles in 2018. Then 2019, the NWA reintroduced the tag team titles with the Crockett Cup, the co-promoted event with Ring of Honor, as well as talents from New Japan and AAA, all competing for those the Crockett Cup trophies that we know that the Villains Enterprise of Brody King and PCO would go on to win those titles. 2020, the NWA at Hard Times would introduce the television championship. Ricky Starks would outlast guys like Tim Storm and Trevor Murdoch and Zicky Dice and a few others to become the first NWA TV champion of the modern era. And then this year, they introduced the women's tag team titles at Empower, and we're already set for next year. They're going to introduce the World Junior Heavyweight Championship. What do you guys think about that? That every year that Billy Corgan has been involved with the NWA, they've introduced at least one new championship.
Can't wait to 2025 when they introduce the Midget Championship. I'm sorry, the Minis Championship.
Thank you.
Please don't joke about that because it could happen.
It'll be a short tournament.
Oh, well, there's rumors, right? I've heard speculation that they were thinking about reintroducing a 6-man tag or some sort of form of a trios title. We saw they kind of hinted at it at one of the episodes of Power when the N introduced Jack Stane as one of their third partner now. So, I mean, anything is possible, right?
Does that mean now that Jack Stane and the End are going to start having problems with each other? Is that how that works when there's a new team or faction formed?
It's typically what happens.
We'll have to wait and see if they win a title. If they do, then we'll start seeing the drama. So I don't know.
I hope they save that drama for their mama. I like the End teaming up with Jack Stane. It's a lot of beef out there. Real wrestlers, not 300 pounders, not 3 100-pounders.
Well, and the thing about it too is if they were to reintroduce a 6-man tag title, who better than those guys to be champions? I mean, let's face it, we had Jack Stane on the show earlier this year, one of my favorite interviews we did this year, and he made no bones about it that he's about legacy right now, and he's looking to, win any championship he can that he hadn't previously held. So obviously the women titles are not available to him, but the television championship, he made no qualms about it that he would be interested in challenging for that title. And assuming that the 6-man tag were to be created in 2022, he'd be looking to challenge for those titles as well.
Well, I haven't given up hope that they won't do a 6-man title. So, keeping my fingers crossed.
Terry McDermott suggests that maybe a 3-way championship, since Billy loves those 3-way matches so much.
Terry, don't give him any ideas. Whiz.
That's for 2027 as part of the 20-year
20-year plan.
Master plan they have, yeah.
Well, because
Apparently, their 20-year plan was to introduce 1 to 2 titles every year, and then we'll see how it goes. Hey, if I can be serious for a moment.
Sure, Lance.
Okay, DK Storm.
Okay, the moment's passed. No, I do believe they have too many titles. I was a big believer in doing
Less
away
is
with
more?
the well, I wanted them to do away with the national title when Adonis or whatever his name is
Forfeited it.
forfeited it. I really want at least set it on the shelf and kind of be done with it. It's not used well. Supposedly it's going to be used better in NWA USA, but then I started thinking that was probably the wrong show for that title to be on. That show should probably highlight the television title where more people can see it. And if they put the television title back on the thing of 1 week you determine the challenger and then the next week the champion defends the title, that I think that would be a good thing. And then you also highlight your junior heavyweights on that show. And then I'd make the national title the premier title on Powerrr. And then the world title, of course, would be the grand prize, the feature belt that you rarely see the champion wrestle on TV or only make sparse appearances on NWA USA, make more appearances on Power. But the championship really needs to start working indies as many as he can.
Yeah.
And be gone. Because I can't miss you if you don't go away.
This is true.
And so I don't know what to say about the women's tag team title. It's obviously they had no plan for it after the crown champions. I will say that the Hex is doing a good job of being champions as they, have gotten booked quite a bit outside the NWA. So
they're also the only tag team not feuding with each other right now, or not showing signs that they don't like each other right now. They're the only real tag team in the NWA right now.
We'll give them time. I'm sure that won't last.
Yeah, but this is a record for the NWA.
I mean, you're not wrong. See, and I agree with you. I really feel like the rush to crown champions was one of those deals where they definitely pulled the cart before the horse, because when they made the announcement that they were going to crown the television champion, there were talks on that first taping that I was at back on September 30th, the October 1st, 2019 tapings, that they wanted to crown the TV champion, that they were going to bring back the TV title. And I think at that time, the three of us even discussed it, saying, hey, wouldn't it be a better idea to have like a junior heavyweight title? You could bring back Barrett Brown. He could get that opportunity to defend that title. The NWA at the time had Matt Cross. They had Ricky Starks, Caleb Conley. All these guys could have been in the running for that junior heavyweight division. And of course, that seemed to fizzle out. And when the NWA put a greater focus on the heavyweights, and then of course, as it would come to pass, they would introduce that television title, and then it would go on to the smallest guy in the tournament, Ricky Starks. And it just kind of felt like, well, why did we do that? We could have had a separate, if you had a junior heavyweight title, the title could have been something more significant for the smaller guys on the roster. The national title could have been something for the bigger guys on the roster. And then there wouldn't be a lot of confusion. But by having a television title that after 7 matches, if you win 7 in a row, you get a shot at the world champion, or having a national championship who is basically has an opportunity to be the number 1 contender for the 10 pounds of gold at any time they choose, it just feels like there's a conflict of interest there. It's like, all roads lead to the 10 pounds, but what's the difference? I mean,
Well, with the junior heavyweight title, and I think Jaden would agree with me here, you have a chance to feature different wrestlers because you don't have, right now, all the same guys can wrestle for all three titles.
Yeah.
So, and especially with a group that doesn't have many people in general. So, although they are adding more and more, so we are happy about that. Yeah, I mean, Jaden, wouldn't you agree if they had put a junior heavyweight champion in instead of a TV champion, that would have given them a chance to focus on a different set of wrestlers instead of having just kind of this roundabout with, Pope Aldous and Murdoch?
As a fan of combat sports, you don't see very many. Well, I guess it's not 100% true. There's like 19 world titles in the boxing, but in UFC, there's one world championship, one middleweight, one flyweight. All the different weight classes, and a lot of people say, well, they don't want to see the smaller wrestlers. That's not true in today's wrestling. Hell, if that was true, nobody would watch any wrestling because they're all small wrestlers except for like a very handful. But there's some really talented smaller guys, and it'll be a chance to show them against each other, not getting squashed about guys that are twice their size, so they can showcase what they can do, give something special, something new. WWE ain't doing the cruiserweights right. I think they're going to eliminate the belt altogether.
Yeah, I think it's already gone.
The AEW doesn't have a lightweight championship. I mean, all right, Ricky Starks is there now, and Sammy Guevara was pretty decent, but they're all small in AEW except for, again, a handful of wrestlers. So there's nothing special about a light heavyweight championship there. But in NWA, you got some beef. You got all this. You got even Camille's beef, but in a different kind of way. No disrespect. I hope she doesn't kick my butt. But there's some big people, so a lot of big wrestlers there. So having something different to make you stand out, to make you special, to make you not look like every other wrestling promotion out there, I think that's a good idea.
I mean, yeah, and you just nailed it, because there is that distinction, that junior heavyweight distinction is becoming a thing of the past, with the WWE marginalizing the title. It came back with such fanfare when they had that big Cruiserweight Classic just a few years ago. And now, I mean, it's on the verge of being eliminated from programming altogether. I mean, they even had a whole program dedicated to just the junior heavyweight division, that Cruiserweight Classic and then 205 Live. And now that's gone. And, like you mentioned, Impact has their X division, but that's never been about weight limits. It's been about no limits. And then, AEW just doesn't even have that distinction. Ring of Honor didn't have that distinction. United Wrestling Network doesn't have that distinction. So for the NWA to bring that title back, I really felt like if they would have done that as opposed to the television title, it would have made more sense. But I mean, we're discussing something that is really relatively like 2 years ago now.
Well, that's what we are. We're the NWA fans. A lot of people say we live in the past.
Well, but it's still relevant today because of decisions that they're making today. And apparently my dog has seen a squirrel. But anyway, yeah, it's just, and it goes to our kind of continued thing. We get confused sometimes by what they do. But I'm excited to see what they will do with this title. But what I really want them to do is give it the respect. Unfortunately, a lot of promotions are like WWE when it came to the Cruiserweight title. Jaden was pointing out like boxing and stuff like that, or mixed martial arts. You're a world champion at whatever weight limit you are. And they make a big deal out of the fact that you're a world champion at whatever weight limit you are. And, you are the best for that weight limit. Whereas in wrestling, weight limit has always been kind of, we only care about the heavyweight title. The junior heavyweight title is something here for the smaller guys to play with. But, and I think we saw this even a little bit when the red belt was made, which was the last junior heavyweight belt. Never said world anywhere on it. Just NWA junior heavyweight title. And ooh, that bugged me. And it's just like, it needs to be promoted and billed and as a big deal that it's a world championship. And the person who holds it's the best in the world at that, at around 200 pounds, give or take. And so I don't guess I've heard if they're using a specific weight limit or not yet. Is anybody else out there? Yo, you people out there,
I haven't heard them say specifically weight class, but I would imagine it's going to be like the 220 and under, with the fact that they've featured guys like Jeremiah Plunkett, who, although has done a great job in, really putting a greater effort into his conditioning and his health, has lost a lot of weight. I don't think he's near that 205 weight limit. And a lot of the guys that were part of the that first, what was it, a battle royal for the junior heavyweight spot. I mean, he was one of the bigger guys in it. But, I think he would be, I think it'd be very complimentary to say that he was at 220 pounds, and that's not trying to dismiss what he's done. He's in the best shape of his life. He hasn't looked this good in a while, but he's not a 205 guy, that's for sure.
Well, and it's so hard to tell because so many people still work weights.
Yeah.
Sometimes in opposite directions. And, I know Dave Scooby in some places have pointed out that, he had a problem with some of the ROH guys being in there because they were competitors or former ROH World Champions and everything like that. And it's like they're heavyweights. It's like, no, they've never been heavyweights. I mean, the average ROH guy's around, 200 is around 200 pounds or less.
I mean, talking out loud, how big do you think Bryan Danielson is? Like what, 196, 205? Where do you put Bryan Danielson at?
They bill him in the 190s in AEW, and WWE he would be billed between like 195 and 210, depending on what they wanted for him. If I absolutely had to guess, I'd say he's probably not too far off from I've been saying two when I mean one. I would say he's probably around 185, give or take. It's not like they weigh in on every show or every card like they do in MMA and stuff like that. I mean,
it's not official.
They did a weigh in for Cody versus Nick Aldis, and Cody weighed in at 206. And so, and that was with gear on. So, I mean, that could add up to another 5, 6, 7 pounds. So Cody probably is under 200 pounds if if he were just weighing in Speedo, so to speak.
We were talking about this before the show started, and it's ironically about Batman, but pro wrestling kind of ruined something. 205 pounds isn't a small guy. Heck, even 180 pounds isn't that small of a guy. But in the world of pro wrestling, that's very, very, very small. So, that's what about an average guy is, about 200 and something pounds, if they're in somewhat decent shape with some kind of muscles. Anywhere between 180 and 200. The 300 pounders that are athletes is few and far between nowadays, unless they're in professional wrestling.
Well, I'm just proud that makes me an overachiever because I'm not 200 pounds.
Maybe either.
You're also not an athlete. I mean, you're more like an athletic supporter.
Oh, zing!
He does support athleets.
Yes.
So I will agree with you on that one.
Jesus, thanks, guys. Chris Drummond Chris brings up the fact, how about we stop adding belts to the NWA when only 2 or 3 titles actually matter?
I agree with him. In fact, they
Chris,
should get rid of some.
I think if you would have listened to the first part of the show, we kind of pointed out that that every year that the NWA has been in existence, they've created, the Billy Corgan NWA. Every year that they've been in existence, they've added an additional title or two to the fray. Even taking us to 2022, they are going to add that junior heavyweight title. It's not for show. I mean, this is going to happen. So for every year since 2017, they've introduced a new title to the Lightning One era of the NWA. So I think this is just part of how it's going to be. Now, I personally believe that they shouldn't add any more titles, at least for a while, until the brand grows that can support, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 titles. That's just me.
You know what's weird though? I was actually thinking this the other day. There's all these titles in the NWA, championships in the NWA right now. But I remember watching a Jim Crockett promotion on TBS, one of their Saturday night shows. There was the World Heavyweight Champion, United States Champion, Television Champion, World Six-Man Tag Team Champions, United States Tag Team Champions, World Junior Heavyweight Champion, UWF Champion, UWF Television Champion. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm listing them off. And I think even Denny Brown was on there, or maybe Lasertron, or one of the guys was there with the World Junior Heavyweight Championship. That's all on 1 2-hour broadcast, and it didn't feel that many back then. Well, you know why? They had a huge roster that were running 3 or 4 TV shows. I think that's the difference. And every championship, with maybe the exception of the Junior Heavyweight, meant something.
Well, I mean, you just answered your own question. The roster could support that, and we on this show we've even discussed in the past, like, how many legitimate contenders do we have for the 10 pounds of gold? And I mean, even just this was just a few weeks ago. Aldous has said he doesn't want a shot at it right now. The Pope didn't want a shot at it. So who else do you have? Well, Matt Cordona's in the picture. I guess Mike Knox is in the picture. Jack Stain seemingly got pushed to the side. Anthony Mayweather hasn't even wrestled on programming for a while. Who else is there to challenge for the 10 pounds of gold? Mims? I like Mims, but he ain't the guy. He ain't that guy.
Did Gangrel ever get a shot?
Gangrel gets his shot on January the 8th at the Duval Brawl, which is coming up in Jacksonville as part of the Love Alive charity that the Pope runs. But outside of that, I mean, no. Who are the guys that are the number? What are the top 10 for the NWA challengers for the 10 pounds of gold?
I used to really, that pisses me off too, because I remember we're talking about all the school Crockett promotions on TBS, but I remember Ron Garvin wanted a shot against Ric Flair. Barry Windham wanted a shot against Ric Flair. Jimmy Garvin wanted a shot against Ric Flair. Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff at the time, Ricky Morton. They were all talking about getting shots. What is the Pope saying? I don't want a shot. What do you mean that Aldous doesn't want a shot? You should always want. If not, then what the heck is that championship doing there?
Exactly.
I think, yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest thing that Jay said, I got 3 thoughts going through my mind at the same time. But
that's three more than normal.
Exactly. So I'm a little bit, confused here. I think, like one of the things Jay said, did you put out a top 10 ranking for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship? Who are the top 10 contenders? And that's even with some of their latest additions. Who would be your top 10 contenders? And then another thing we talked about, even with all the titles back in the day, we talked about the 6-man titles. The 6-man titles were there so the Road Warriors and Dusty Rhodes could be world champions, and primarily the Road Warriors more than Dusty Rhodes, because they were the ones that showed up with their belts on for the interviews, and they also brought the international belts when they held the All Japan International Tag Team Championships. Because
let me interrupt real quick. Our pal over at SoCal Uncensored, Steve, says, forget the belts. I just want to see a better picture of Jaden's avatar.
What, Godzilla playing a guitar?
Yeah.
I'm sending it to Jay right now so he can send it to you.
I'll put it up on the screen.
So, anyhow, and the junior heavyweight championship was brought in from time to time whenever they just kind of want to feature another title. Denny Brown was used when he was champion primarily as a enhancement talent. And all the UWF titles faded away. Only one ever got unified into the NWA titles. The others just mysteriously disappeared. Yeah, and there were a lot of people that thought Jim Crockett Promotion did have too many titles back in that day. But they could, like we were saying, they had enough shows. They could put people out there. They had enough roster. There was always somebody to challenge. But I don't know that there's enough people that are available to challenge now. Let's see. Sean Vega says Aldis, Jax, Vladimir Pope, Titus?
I think he meant Tyrus.
Okay. Master Cardona.
And I think you meant Adonis for Masters. But yeah, I mean, okay.
And that's
so
that.
But even out of those guys, Aldis says, hey, I'll come after the title when I want it. Pope says, I'm going to let Mr. Murdoch have his day in the sun. So that really only gives you a Jax, Latimer, Tyrus, Adonis, and Cardona. I mean, maybe you could make the argument for Scion. I mean, but really, like, again, okay. Well, but even still, like, would Latimer even really be in the top 10? When was the last time he won a match?
Well, no. In fact, they seem to be going through a whole crisis with him. And yeah, I mean, you're looking at it, and it's just like, well, like I pointed out, I go, that's, even with the saying it's 7 people, it's not even 10 yet, and 2 of them have already said they don't want to challenge at this moment, which is stupid. And I mean, I think it's fine for Aldis to say, I want to challenge for the tag team titles with my buddy here. That's a perfectly fine thing to say, but don't say it at the expense of the world title.
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't even choose his words very well when he cut that promo, because, I mean, he didn't say, oh, I want to go challenge for the tag titles with my buddy. The words out of his mouth are, when I'm ready to go for that world's heavyweight title, it'll be mine. It's like, well, then what are you waiting for, pal? Go get it.
So I don't get that. But yeah, and the booking sucks. So it's hard to make contenders. And going back to the list that Mega gives us, when you get Cardona, Cardona's just showed up. Yeah. So he's on name value alone. We don't know if he'll be there at the next pay-per-view.
That's not a certainty.
Which brings up another point. Well, I know was one of the things we were going to talk about tonight. So let me, do a hard left or a hard right turn here and go, excuse me, let me choke first.
Don't do that.
We still haven't heard anything really on the next pay-per-view. So, I mean, do people think it's being kept a secret, or have the details not been worked out? Or, I mean, yes, they don't normally announce a card too far ahead, but I mean, we haven't even heard, normally by the end of the one pay-per-view or the last pay-per-view or shortly thereafter, they go, our next pay-per-view is going to be,
well,
but even with the junior heavyweight title, they're like, it'll be filled at our next pay-per-view, which we don't know when it is.
I have a running theory on that. If you would allow me an opportunity to put my conspiracy theory hat on here, I think that the NWA is being cautious as to not announce a pay-per-view because of the growing trend with the coronavirus and the Omicron variant. I think that they are playing it safe, because if this is kind of how the coronavirus started off in 2020, where it started to get worse before it got better. And it started, they announced that, oh, hey, there's this virus. Hey, we're all going to wear masks. Okay, cool. Wear your mask. And then the next thing you know, okay, we're going to have to start shutting down businesses and start shutting down live events. And in my state, like I can't even go into some restaurants without proving that I'm vaccinated. So there's a lot of things that are moving pieces going on right now with the coronavirus, with the Omicron variant. And I think they don't want to announce the pay-per-view until they're sure what they can do with the pay-per-view. Now, the rumor is it's Crockett Cup. The rumor is it's going to be sometime in March, and the rumor is it's going to be in Tennessee, like Nashville. But, they haven't officially confirmed any of that. And I think the reason is just because I don't know what's going to happen with the coronavirus.
The Crockett Cursed Cup. It seems like it's every year it's March, and every year it gets canceled, at least the last year, and didn't even happen the year after.
Yeah.
By the way, Jay, I sent the pictures to your Twitter since I couldn't send them to Facebook because the way the app's working.
Gotcha.
Well, I understand the concept to a point. I also understand that life's full of risk.
Sure.
And so to sit there and, we could still, nothing could shut down, but we could still be talking about possible shutdowns for the next 6 months. So at what point do you go, okay, we're going to risk it and schedule it and do it. And then if we have to cancel, we cancel. Or, viruses mutate. There's going to be a new variant out within probably 6 to 7 months. And, I'm not going to get into the political side about whether people should or shouldn't, do all the things that are talked about. But I don't, at some point you got to move forward. And even if you have to cancel, then you can cancel. But I don't think that you can sit there and go, well, hey, things might go, haywire.
And again, that's a fair thing to say, but it's not our money. It's not our, we're not paying for any of this until it's the actual pay-per-view. So,
I don't know. I got a lot of money going in for shows that are showing up on YouTube. Same week.
Look, I'm not disagreeing with you on that either. That's something that doesn't really sit well with me as somebody who is paying for the show weekly. But at this point, I'm not really sure what what the end game is for them, because, for all intents and purposes, the show that they're putting on YouTube kind of sounds like more of a show that I'd be interested in watching.
Yeah, I'm very much.
In fact, I think I would prefer this show as opposed to the show that I'm getting every Tuesday. And I don't know if, I don't know what they're actually thinking. I don't know what the thought process is. I just feel like they're not really thinking things through here. And it'll be kind of funny to see how the audience reacts. Like if this show is as exciting as I've heard people say it is, and if it's as action-packed as they say it's going to be, then why would anyone watch the other show? If you're getting the national title, you're getting the junior heavyweight division, what's the point of watching the other program?
Well, think of the positives, though. Yeah, you're right. Why would you care about want to be watching Powerrr, especially the way they present it now? But I'm very excited about the NWA USA or whatever they're calling it. First of all, I think the national title makes most sense because it's national, like it's their version of the US title. And then, so there's that, even if that belt is damn ugly. And NWA Gold, that fans, I'm talking directly to you, NWA Gold. Fans don't know what you're talking about when they vote that title as one of the better looking championships on your little poll on Instagram. Cheap plug. So, but that thing's ugly. That thing is uglier than like a bowling shoe. But either way, it's cool that it's cool that it's going to be on the NWA USA. Say what you will about Raven, you know, whether you like him, whether you don't like him. The guy's legitimately a genius with a genius IQ. I've spoke with him. He knows a lot about professional wrestling. Look at his shoot interviews. Everything he says in those shoot interviews is something we say at least I say all the time. He's a very smart guy. If he's booking this, it's going to be the most well booked. He was a decent commentator. I mean, he's no Gordon Soley or Jim Ross in his prime, but hey, there we go. But still, he was a very decent commentator, better than what they have right now on the show you have to pay for. So, yeah, let's get the best show for free. I'm excited.
I mean, I am too, and I really do feel like, again, there's a lot to be excited about, I feel. But, you know, we kind of, it's hard for us as fans because we've been around for a while. The three of us have been following the NWA back to those, you know, the quote unquote wilderness era, you know, back when they were running shows, you know, all across the United States in small, you know, boys and girls clubs or high school gyms. And we've seen the NWA grow to heights that maybe, I don't know about you guys, but there's times when I never thought the NWA would get to this point. But then I see them do things that I feel like, wow, that feels like a misstep. I feel like there's a better way to get to that point. There's a better way to move ahead. And I just don't see them making those moves. And it's a little frustrating to me. But you know, getting back to the show, you know, there's a lot of things that they have been doing right. And I do want to point out some of the positives because, you know, look, in 2018, the NWA's first year of Billy Corgan being the owner of the NWA, they did one live event. And that's not counting any of the shows that they co-promoted with United Wrestling Network. It doesn't, you know, any of the other shows they did with other promotions. They did that one 70th anniversary show. That was the one live event that the NWA promoted. In 2019, they did two live events and included television tapings. So in 2019, we got that pop-up event they co-promoted with Tried and True Pro Wrestling. And then we also got the Crockett Cup. And then they did the television tapings at the end of the end of September, beginning of October. And they followed that up with more television tapings in December. Then 2020, you know, they got the one live event and a couple of TV tapings in. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So, I mean, realistically, we're talking about they did four pay-per-views total from 2018 to 2020. They did a couple of TV tapings as well. This year alone, and they started late. They didn't start till March. They got 6 live events in. 6 pay-per-view events, or I guess 5 if you don't count By Any Means Necessary. But we had Back for the Attack, When Our Shadows Fall, Empower, the 73rd anniversary show, By Any Means Necessary. That I know that wasn't a pay-per-view, so to speak, but it was a live event. And then the Hard Times pay-per-view. They were able to do live events in Atlanta, St. Louis, and in Kentucky. So I feel like that's something that should be celebrated, right? Because that's more in less time than they did ever before. You know, they took a YouTube concept. The 10 Pounds of Gold was a concept, the proof of concept. That's something that you heard David Lagana and Billy Corgan speak about quite frequently. The proof of concept is that we can put on this show, and we know it's going to be good, and we're going to get someone to help us co-promote these shows because this isn't something we could sustain forever. And once we can get to a partner to broadcast our shows, we're still going to do it our way. And so they didn't have to compromise on how they got to fight. Now, sure, there's a lot of things that changed in between there. I do believe that alienated a lot of the fan base that was following the product via YouTube. And I think they're still trying to work to get that back. And I think that's a big reason why we're getting the new secondary show. But I really believe that had the pandemic not put everything to a halt, 2 years ago, and had, the NWA been able to flourish under where it was heading, I think we would be talking about, the 6 live events and maybe even more of a touring schedule. And I have this a lot of optimism for what the NWA is going to be in 2022. DK, I mean, when you hear that out loud, that they had 6 events over the course of 2021, and that's from March to December. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, mixed. It's good. It's obviously better than what they had been doing, but it's also less than once a month.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. The main reason they were able to do it is because they apparently got a good enough deal from Fight for when they went exclusive. So, you know, they were at least able to sell themselves in a way that was to their advantage. I mean, was an improvement? Sure. Is it great? No, not. I mean, not really. Are things looking up? Yes. The by any means necessary was a positive. The show they're doing for Pope's charity in Florida, it's a positive. The fact that they're doing another show in
February. The
February.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the Powerrr Trip, and that's good. So, and if they can keep these type of things up, you know, then even like, you know, how much they need to promote a pay-per-view ahead of time, you know, that can be cut somewhat, but still it's kind of, you know, it'll be good when they're on a more regular schedule, as in, you know, we know that these things are coming up.
Yeah.
You know, we had hard times too. We need Crockett Cup 22. We need what, you know, whatever pay-per-view names they have, except for when their Shadow Falls, please drop that. And everything for, you know, the year. I mean, I'd like to see some of that. So it's, I mean, is it an improvement? Sure. I mean, I would certainly hope that there would be an improvement. Is it a start? Yes. Do they need a lot more? Yes. It's, I mean, I'll give them credit where it's due, but I'm not going to oversell it either.
No, and please don't take my exuberance for celebrating. I'm just saying, as a company that's obviously struggled because of the pandemic, the fact that they were able to turn around and pivot, it took a while. I mean, look, they took a knee in 2020, and had it not been for the United Wrestling Network, I mean, the tag titles would have still been on Eli Drake and James Storm. The television title still would have been on Zicky Dice. The national championship still would have been on Aaron Stevens. I mean, like, look, had it not been for Primetime Live, the NWA would have had zero activity after their final pay-per-view and TV tapings in January. So, I mean, kudos to having the right relationships and the right partnerships. But it did. The NWA took a very long time to pivot, and they struggled with the pandemic just like everyone else. What I'm trying to celebrate, though, is that they are heading in the right path. And again, you know, Sean Mega pointed it out. You know, the NWA actually had more than 6 live events. I'm talking about like the pay-per-views and the live events, but they, you know, you got to consider each television taping. I mean, they're selling tickets for those events. They're selling merchandise at those events. They're selling VIP meet and greets at those events. And, you know, that's what's powering the subscription on Fight. So they really did more than 6 live events, but, you know, generally,
I mean, yes, they technically did more than 6, but they're all part of the same. When I'm looking at an event, I'm looking at things that are apart.
Yeah, and
like
they
did pay-per-views and tapings.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I structured it the way I did, because the TV tapings, yes, they're important, but like again, it's all part of that same satellite, right? It's the same, blocked out 3 or 4 days that they're going to do the pay-per-view and the TV tapings as well. But I really think that the idea that the NWA is moving in the right direction. I think the added programming to YouTube is going to be beneficial, especially because I feel like they lost a lot of their audience when they went behind the pay window. And we had this discussion on Discord earlier today. At one point, the YouTube channel, the first 7 episodes of Powerrr, they were averaging over 200,000 views. Now, I can't tell you what that exact number is for watch time. I don't have the analytic for that, but they were averaging 200,000 people watching the videos. And yes, the number did fall over time, but they were still like raking in like 150 to 120, 110. Still a very significant amount of people viewing the product. I don't think they have 200,000 subscribers on Fight. I don't think they have 100,000 subscribers on Fight. And they probably would be lucky to have, 10,000? I mean, I think that would be a huge number for them. So for them to try to get more of that audience that they kind of left behind on YouTube, not everyone that was ordering the pay-per-views necessarily had to order, the Fight subscription either. And I think the more content that you're making available on YouTube, I don't want it to take away from what I'm already paying for, but I think for an audience that has, allowed the NWA to slip out of their hands, I think it's a good deal to try to get those fans back and have those occasional extra buys that they could bring to the NWA.
What happened is they overestimated their importance and the desire that people want to see the product, and especially when they started giving people the product that they were giving. They wasn't perfect. There was a lot of stupid stuff over time, but the first set of tapings was probably their best set when it came to the overall, and then it all kind of started going downhill, like what happens once you turn 40. It's just yeah, trust me, Jay, that Greg can let you know. But it's really they really overestimated how they bought their own hype, and I think that's what it is. They're like, oh, we get 200,000 people, we'll get like 100,000 easy to come by the Fight. No, they really need to start building and putting on a product that people want to see, and they needed to so that they actually have the ability to see it. I don't know if that means they're going to have a pay-per-view every time they have to have a new TV taping, and now with 2 separate programs to try to get content for. Does that mean they're going to have lots and lots of extra pay-per-views? They need that many extra pay-per-views. I love the idea of live events. I wish they would have a mix of things: live events, pay-per-views, TV tapings, working with other promotions. It's a shame that the Championship from Hollywood thing didn't work out, because the only Championship Wrestling from Hollywood stuff I bought on that pay-per-view is because I wanted to see a couple of the matches, like with Trevor Murdoch, who I was a big fan of. Yeah. I wanted to see that. I even bought the pay-per-view because I wanted to see Trevor Murdoch win, and it's the one I thought he would actually do so. I wish there was more, having the championship defended. I say, I'm starting to turn into Craig Classic, but I'd like to see the championship defended on house shows like this one coming up for the Pope's promotion and the NWA or whatever it is, the Charlotte Fan Fest and other stuff like that. I'd like to see them on bigger cards around, but not necessarily like AEW or Ring of Honor, where they're more of like a second class attraction, not even like a main attraction. I mean, some places that actually use the championship as the way it's supposed to be, as a big something special, an attraction that people want to come see. I want to see them on pay-per-view, but they don't need like 2,000 pay-per-views a month or, be like the next WWE. No. If they do 4 a year, I'd be happy with it, as long as they were giving me content in other ways that was actually worth seeing.
Well, I think 4 a year would be perfect, 1 a quarter. And then, they've said that the Pope show is going to be taped, and I'm pretty sure the Tried and True is going to be taped as well.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet.
But I think this is where, if you want to go back to an old ploy that was used back in the day that we've talked about, if you're having live events, You can, a live event can easily be a 2.5 hour to 3 hour show.
Mm-hmm.
You record the first 2 hours. You highlight the main matches that are on the third hour, afterwards. Here's Murdoch, beating Gangrel. Here's someone trying to attack him, but this time he clobbers them with the chair. Stuff like that. Now I'm going, Thanks a lot, Jaden. And
DK Classic?
DKJ Classic, I guess. I don't know. Jay, you need to start saying as well, so that we can.
Not going to happen.
Well, we'll find you. Don't worry.
Well, I know you will.
You can still hear my voice, but we need to. I think we'll see more of that, especially with 2 shows going. I don't think they'll stay, especially since they've basically given up on their Atlanta studio for now.
I mean, that's certainly what it seems like, and again, with Jaden, a lot of what
they need to.
Yeah, I think they should, especially with the way COVID is right now. If you're going into a state where it has higher restrictions and it's going to limit your attendance, that's not a good look for anybody. And they made this smart decision. I don't know if this was planned or if this was just happened by happenstance, but moving to the smaller arena, smaller studio at the GPB taping the studios, I felt like it looked better for TV, but that pay-per-view looked rough with only, a handful of people there, and they were expecting more, but kind of what
they supposedly sold more tickets that they had to refund.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I heard too. And to Jaden's point, I feel like what they're doing right now, I think that I don't know. I'm not an insider. I used to be an insider. I used to have a lot of connections within the NWA, but that was about 15 years ago, and that's all have gone by the wayside.
DK used to work for the NWA, didn't you?
Well, I mean, that was the rumor.
That was the rumor.
That and selling chicken. But
I'm still waiting for my checks.
Yeah. That's a lot of wrestlers in the NWA, I'm sure.
Thanks, Bruce. Getting back to what I was saying, though, I really do feel like that's what they're working towards. I feel like the delineation between Power and their weekly YouTube show, USA, I think the idea is that you're going to see more live events for that USA show. I feel like, I don't know for certain, but I feel like there's elements that you can take from that live show and feature on your USA programming that's going to make it very distinct from what they're doing on Power, which is very, it's rudimentary. This is what Power is. And the more different Power becomes, the further they get away from that GPB studio, I think it loses some of that magic. Now, I'm not saying that they can't recreate that magic elsewhere, but it wasn't in St. Louis. Sorry, guys. And I don't blame the fans there. I blame the setup of the building. It didn't make sense. It looked very empty. It looked very shallow. And the fact that they were trying to tape so much to get so much content in, and you had, nobody in the audience, that's not a good look for the program.
Yeah, they were not wise on how they filmed in St. Louis, in that they didn't have a set setup. They recorded a lot of stuff sans fans, and that just did not work. I mean, you can't do that today. I'm not sure you could ever really do that. Really do that. I mean, you can get away with it. You can get away with a studio show that has 50 people. I mean, that's not a problem. You can't get away with not having any people because, again, you're going to emotionally invest, very similar to the way that the fans at the place emotionally invest.
Well, I think the only time you could have gotten away with that was during the height of the pandemic. Had the NWA, went and just bought a warehouse, put something together to broadcast that show, they very easily could have done a Power from some remote location, and that would have been perfectly acceptable because we all understood that, hey, the world is shut down. The fact that we're getting anything is appreciated, but the fact of the matter is that when they're letting, they didn't do that then, why are they doing it now?
Well, look, you just said a key thing here. And if I were the NWA, sure, the NWA has an Atlanta connection, great, but you're not on TBS. They have a St. Louis connection. Maybe you can look there. But, you got to spend money to make money. And one of the things that they need to look at is finding either a smaller old warehouse or going to Mueller Steel buildings or whatever, and basically setting up a studio that's theirs. You can run a training school out of it if you want to. And it doesn't matter where it is. It's almost irrelevant as to where it is. You set up seats for 100 people or 75 people. You find the local boys and girls clubs, or band boosters or whatever. You bring people in at a low cost to come in and cheer the wrestlers. And if you're going to do a studio wrestling show, then let's turn it back into what a studio wrestling show was. And if you're going to start doing live events, which they seem to be doing, and hopefully we'll be doing more of, it'll be, if they ran once a week somewhere, that would be great. But,
once a month,
right now,
once a month would be an improvement.
Yeah,
well, I'm getting there. They seem to be heading towards the once a month. They have something planned in January. They have something planned in February. Stories are pay-per-view maybe in March. So right now we do seem to be heading to a once a month thing. So if we can get that established, get that going, and then get if they could do 12 months in a row of having one show every month, that would be an awesome thing. And I don't mean television show. I mean a actual, live event. And then over time, you can start using your television show to hawk those.
Now, I do want to point out our buddy Luthez, and again, I know Luthez and Hustler representing St. Louis, very St. Louis proud. Our comments on that setup wasn't against the fans. It was against the setup, the entire thing. I'm sorry, that venue looked great for pay-per-view. It looked very, very amateur for a TV taping. And that's just my humble opinion. You could agree, you could disagree. It wasn't the fans. It was the fact that there was a lack of it wasn't built for TV. It just wasn't. And so I really felt like they could have done a much, much better job of putting that together and making it make sense for television. But I also understand, too, that they were trying to tape the entire time that they were there. So I get that. Also, Hustler's been right about a few things, and he says that they're coming back to St. Louis 3 times next year. I mean, that sounds great. I think that the more that the NWA can continue to visit those hallmark cities, those historical ties to the NWA, I think the better off they are. When they did the Crockett Cup in Crockett Cup in Charlotte, or near Charlotte, it had that feel, like that historical feel that the NWA was in Charlotte. And then doing the TV tapings in Atlanta, those ties to the historic of the Jim Crockett promotions to the National Wrestling Alliance, you felt that. Them being at the chase for the 73rd, I think, was beautiful. It was a very fitting moment. Trevor Murdoch winning that title in St. Louis at the chase of all places was certainly one of the most prolific moments that the NWA's had in recent years. However, I just didn't like the venue for TV. For pay-per-views, I'm all about it. I think it'd be a great place for pay-per-views. For the television, it just didn't work for me.
Maybe
Well,
they
they
set it up wrong. It's possible because they did TV there for years for Wrestling at the Chase, and it kind of looked cool. I think it was not necessarily the building. I think it was how they plotted out the assignments of the seats and how they made it look. That's possibly it. And if we're talking about venues, yes, all right. Charlotte's huge for the NWA. You know what? Almost everywhere in the United States was huge for the NWA somewhere. I'm going to Craig Classic this again, but the Portland was huge for the NWA. Yep. Alabama was huge for the NWA. Yep. The NWA was reborn in New Jersey during that whole dark period we're talking about during Dennis Carluzzo. It wasn't Charlotte. It wasn't Georgia. It was little teeny tiny towns in New Jersey. The NWA really started its resurgence all over again, and parts of Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia.
And you can't leave out some parts of Florida like Tampa and Orlando and where else were they running? There's a couple different spots. Joe Price was running in Florida, and Ron Nemi and Howard Brody. All those guys were running out there in Florida, putting the NWA out there. So
yeah.
I mean, look, there are a lot of what's the word Billy uses? The altruistic home of the NWA. I think that's what he called St. Louis. But like honestly, there's many historical locations that have ties to the National Wrestling Alliance. I mean, we haven't even spoken about Houston, and that was such a pivotal spot for the NWA for many years with Paul Bosch. And Bruce Tharp knew that, and they ran a lot of events out of Houston. Because of the connections that it had historically to Paul Bosch. I mean, I don't think the NWA is coming to Los Angeles anytime soon. I don't think that's going to be a thing, but there are plenty of big cities out there and even little cities that make so much sense that the NWA should just should be. And I think the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, the South, the Southwest, there's many locations that the NWA should appear. Mid-Atlantic, of course. But I mean, I think that all is pretty common knowledge at this point.
If they're going to use historic building. Go ahead, DK, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I'd probably avoid Texas for now.
You think?
Always a reason to avoid Texas.
Well, I mean, this isn't anything against the NWA specifically. There are too many small promotions that run. And then also we've started gaining where, we've had WWE out here recently. Of course, they're going to be out here again for WrestleMania. AEW's been here a couple times. I believe their schedule's coming back. We've had New Japan Strong out here. MLW comes occasionally. Impact's running here for their next pay-per-view. And so it's just, I just don't know that we're the right spot for them at the moment.
Sure.
But what about WrestleMania weekend? Do you think the NWA can capitalize on that? Do you think they know how to capitalize on that?
No.
It's been attempted.
I don't think they know how. And I think that if they had wanted to capitalize on it, they would have had to work a deal with one of the promotions around here. I mean, IHWE is supposed to be making their comeback today. Their Extreme little brother, Insane Hardcore Wrestling is going to do something that afternoon. Iconic Heroes of Wrestling Excellence doing something that evening. Of course, some WrestleCon. Nick Aldis will be here for the WrestleCon thing. Him and Mickey hawking their supplements and everything. But no, ROH is supposed to make their return. That's the weekend that they're scheduled for the return. And, maybe we'll get a big unification match between their two world champions. And, but no, right now I would not recommend Texas for, and certainly not North Central Texas.
Yeah, and I think to what Jaden was saying, I think WrestleMania weekend, I think the problem with those kind of, prior to the pandemic, you would see a lot of wrestling promotions show up and show out for WrestleMania weekends, especially promotions like Game Changer Wrestling really capitalized on the ability.
They've been here too.
Yeah, the ability to run so many events and have different themed shows. But I mean, even before a promotion like Game Changer Wrestling was at that level, I mean, I remember Dragon Gate running shows. I remember a lot of wrestling promotions trying to get in on that weekend to be part of the event. And I just feel like with the NWA, it's a legacy brand that doesn't necessarily connect with an audience that is looking for that hardcore wrestling weekend. And I just don't think it would grab that audience that they would need to make it make sense. I feel like this is one of those times where you take the knee, you understand what that weekend is all about. If someone wants to bring in the world's heavyweight champion or the women's world champion or any of the NWA champions, then by all means, sure, allow your champions to be showcased that weekend. But I think it's a bad idea to try to compete with all those renegade wrestling promotions that are out there that are, they don't care if they take that loss. They don't care because they'll make it up elsewhere. The NWA, I don't think, could afford to have a show with 10 people show up to it, with 20 people to show up to it. I just think that would be a very bad look for the NWA and could potentially hurt their growth down the road.
I wasn't there. I think DK was.
If they start planning today for next year's WrestleMania, then I think you can have a show. But except for it's in California, and I don't know how well they'll do in California.
No, the NWA, as it is right now, no. I'm just telling you, no. It's not only is the market very competitive out here because you have a lot of indies, but then you have a lot of what I'd call like next level independent promotions. So you got like the United Wrestling Network is here, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Then you've got promotions like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, who they're one of the most sought after indie promotions in Southern California, one of the top indie promotions in the country. Then you've got other promotions like Raising the Bar, which is kind of taking over what the old bar wrestling was, getting a lot of buzz out here. Then you've got Defy, who was recently out here in Los Angeles. You've got Game Changer Wrestling, not only doing their Game Changer Wrestling shows, but now they have the LA Fights. Then you have New Japan Strong, who is out here regularly. You've got Prestige coming out here in the next month. And these are all, and then I'd even mention the Sheik's promotion, PCW Ultra. And there's so much competition just in this small market in Southern California. We're not even talking about Northern California. It's just there's too much wrestling at this point. I really feel like it's just not going to happen. This would not be the place to go for the NWA. There's too many options, and that brand doesn't have enough loyal NWA fans here. And if you're going to trek everyone from South Carolina and all across the country out to LA to get an audience, sure, but that's going to be an expensive trip for all those people.
Look, when you look at the top 10 metropolitan areas, the NWA should stay out of all of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Even Philly?
The NWA is a middle city wrestling thing.
I agree 100%.
And
even Philly? That's what I want to know, though. Even Philly?
Yes.
What Philly loves the NWA. If it was done right, the Philly could do, or maybe even like South Jersey could do NWA if it was done right. That's why like when what's his name, Tommy Dreamer used to run, he made sure to work with the NWA because he knew it meant something.
I know you're not a big fan of CZW, and I know that's not necessarily the audience that the NWA is looking for anyways, but did you see that crowd literally shit on Aldis when he defeated Storm for that title? It was
that's the same crowd I've seen. I was at a Dragon Gate show, which drew in a lot of the same wrestlers, and they shit all over wrestlers like Adam Cole They shit on John Moxley. You know, I've seen them shit. I've seen them shit on a lot of wrestlers that would be really, really popular wrestlers and became popular wrestlers, but they shit all over them at the time. I've seen them shit on Jonathan Gresham, and he's amazing. I've seen them shit on Jay Lethal, and he's amazing. It's the crowd doesn't like certain stuff, and it should be a type of crowd that, you know, they never should have done anything to do with all this and Storm and why can't I think of Austin Idol? They should have nothing at all to do with the CZW. I think the only reason that happened is because they had a loose association with David Marquez at the time.
Yeah, and that was part of it.
I think that was the only, but it never should have happened. There could have been a dozen other promotions, and right then and there, the exact same opposite happened when they started working with House of Hardcore, which was Tommy Dreamer's promotion. Then they were over like Rover, gangbusters.
I think a lot of it, you got to look at, you know, when you say a given area. I mean, I don't know enough about the Philadelphia wrestling area. I mean, I really don't. Could you bring the NWA and have a successful show? Sure, maybe. But can you have a successful NWA show? In that they can't change who they are in general to fit a market. And so that's where I don't know. So
I mean, that's a great point.
You know, could they run Pittsburgh? They might be able to run Pittsburgh. Could they run Philly?
Let's fantasy book that for a minute, right? So let's say you've got La Rebellion versus, let's say, Hawk Ari. I think that match would be great. I think that would go over well. Let's put the junior heavyweight. Let's say this is the title match, right? The junior heavyweight title match. Let's just say it's going to be the decision between Austin Aries and Homicide. I think the crowd would be super into that. But then you get to like the national championship, and then you got Chris Adonis versus Judas, or let's say Chris Adonis versus James Storm. Is that going to go over in Philly?
James Storm will get over in Philly. I don't know about Masters, about Adonis, but James Storm, he would get over in Philly.
And then the TV title match, Tyrus versus Scion Part 2. Is that going to go over in Philly?
That doesn't get over in wherever it's being promoted.
You're not wrong.
You know, okay, you're right. I apologize. And I really feel like Camille is the kind of a wrestler that really can get over anywhere. But then, like, let's say Trevor Murdoch versus Matt Cardona. Does that get over in Philly?
Yes. Yes, it 100% can.
All right.
Yes.
Well, then let's go to Philly. So
yes, Cardona's over enough. He can get over in Philly. He's over in this area. He's over all over anyway, but this area especially loves him. If Camille was against, I don't know, Mercedes Martinez or Holly Dead or somebody that's good in, say, maybe somebody in this area, yes, everywhere you gear a specific type of promotion toward that area. NWA does it too. That's why they use a lot of St. Louis people. You would have to slightly modify it more toward what the crowd is going to draw. It's but you would have to, and obviously still keep in mind what's going on nationally, and you still have to sell a pay-per-view. But yes, you can specifically put a type of promotion in an area that's going to draw well for that area and have it go.
But what's draw well?
Build the building. Let's build the ECW arena.
Well, okay, what is that? I don't even know what that is.
About 2,000 people now with the modifications.
Okay, because see, if they came to Texas, they could probably draw 200 at best.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think they could act, I mean, the best they have done is St. Louis, and they sold 800.
I don't know if they'll do 2,000, but I think they could do at least 1,000 there.
Well, and then also think about it too. The NWA isn't dumb. You know, I think they would look for that opportunity to book somebody who would help draw that attendance, whether it be like, you know, and this is just J. Cal throwing crazy stuff out there. But if you were going to bring somebody like maybe the Great Muda back to the NWA, that's the time to do it, when you could have a large crowd and that would mark out for somebody of that stature. And I'm not saying they are going to bring in Muda. I'm just saying somebody like that, somebody who is widely regarded and somebody that would pop an audience.
Well, what I could see working is, since they're using Raven on their show, you bring Raven there, and then you got that ECW connections, and you might be able to do something.
Bring in Shane Douglas, damn it.
Yeah, maybe. I'd
Please
say
don't.
bring in
I
Tommy
love Shane
Dreamer, but
Douglas.
he's currently
a nice
canceled.
guy. He's a very smart guy. He's a very intelligent guy, but he doesn't need to be in the ring anymore. I'm sorry.
No, you're
No,
right.
I'm not saying wrestling. I'm just saying making an appearance.
Oh, they can bring a lot of people. A former NWA champion, Sabu.
Hey,
Everybody and their mother capitalizes on the ECW when they're in the Philadelphia area.
I have a question for you, Jaden, since you know that area better. So Tommy Dreamer's currently canceled.
No,
Could he still be in Philadelphia?
he's officially uncanceled.
Yeah,
has
they
he been
uncanceled him. Yeah, he started showing up in Impact again, and he's back on his radio show. So he's been restored.
Okay, so in Philadelphia, you bring in Raven, you bring in Tommy Dreamer for special appearances. They can cut promos on each other, something. Hopefully not love promos like it's the trend currently. But you could have some fun that way. I mean, I really don't know. On a personal level, I have a hard time believing the NWA in and of itself could draw that many people in Philadelphia. I think you can move them somewhere. I think you can move them anywhere in the Southeast to Central U.S. in the medium cities, and they could probably do well.
MLW does well in the arena, not the 2 events ago, but that was kind of an anomaly, I think, more than the norm. The last event they did very well at the arena. All right, Joseph Fatu is amazing. Hammerstone is amazing. They have a couple other good people, but honestly, who does MLW have that we would consider a draw in Philadelphia?
Our boy Danny Limelight.
A draw in Philadelphia? I'd say he's a draw. He's a good, talented wrestler, but I don't think Homicide meant more. Homicide's there, and he would mean something.
Well, what did they draw? I don't know.
Let's look it up.
Real quick,
I'm going to look it up right now.
While you're looking it up, I just want to point out something. As you guys can see, our buddy Kev is in the chat with us right now. And I'm not going to go too much into detail. We'll talk about it when Kevin is feeling better. But Kevin had a health scare earlier this month, and that's why he's been on sabbatical with us. But he is feeling better, and obviously he's here in the chat, which is makes my heart happy. And soon enough, hopefully we'll have 4 guys doing this podcast in 2022, because Jaden is very much a welcome part of this family. He's been part of the Alliance guys since day one, and Kevin is, of course, is our brother, and we can't wait for him to be back and healthy as well. So, but
they did about 800, DK.
Okay,
that's more than they did in St. Louis, right?
That's what they did in St. Louis, 832.
832. Well, it's probably about what they could do right there. There's at least MLW does kind of gear more toward Philly when they go there. I mean, they bring in Homicide, who's a talented and deserves to be on any promotion right now. They do bring in the Blue Meanie to do something usually. They usually bring in Tajiri, but they don't go overboard with their Philadelphia. They use mostly the same guys as they do anyway.
Hey, let's ask a question since you brought up Tajiri. There are 2 things going on outside the NWA that I kind of want to get some opinions on before we get to my. So Tajiri, middleweight champion, MLW. Is this similar to Rock and Roll Express Tag Team Championship?
Tajiri still moves a lot better.
It's similar but different, and because I know Tajiri's at an advanced age, but he's not Ricky Morton out there. And I feel like I just feel like no, it's not the same. It's similar, and I'd rather see more younger talent, but at the same time, I think because of who Tajiri is, I think he's still kind of a draw. And people are like, oh, hey, that's the guy from the WWE. Let's check him out.
Well, it can be argued the Rock and Roll Express was a draw. They were, what was it, 2019? They were one of the most booked and used tag teams in wrestling.
I can't argue with you. I mean, you're right. I can't argue with that either.
Tajiri moves better. The Rock and Roll more over, even now.
Oh, God, that makes me sad.
Well, it's not necessarily. I don't blame the Rock and Roll on that. They knew what they needed to do.
Series 51, I mean, it's not the same thing as a 60-year-old, but it's still not young. So I'm trying to see consistency here. You know, is our problem with the Rock and Roll Express the fact that they look like they're 60 years old?
For what it's worth, and this has very little to do with the NWA, but kind of has ties to MLW. The next PCW Ultra event, which takes place on January the 28th in Wilmington, California, will feature Hammerstone defending his Ultra Championship against Tajiri. So there's that.
That is interesting that the MLW Heavyweight Champion will face the MLW Middleweight Champion in a match that's not related to MLW at all.
No.
For a title that's not part of MLW at all.
Number one MLW. Our modern day hero says Tajiri is an 80. That's true. But here's something about age. Tim Storm's around Tajiri's age, and he doesn't look it. I think I'd buy Tim Storm still.
Storm, I haven't bought him as much recently, honestly.
I love Tim Storm. He was kind enough to spend some time with us before the 73rd anniversary. I would love for him to continue to wrestle as much as he possibly can, but I think the sun is starting to set on his career, and I don't think that's a shock to him. He's had a phenomenal career. I mean, he started late, and he was able to be the world's heavyweight champion. He was able to go to Japan as champion. He was able to help put the NWA back on the map, and there's not many people that can say that. But I think his day in the sun is coming to an end. And I hate it because, I mean, he's a great dude. There's no one more positive. There's no better brand ambassador for the NWA than Tim Storm. But I just think his time in the ring is just he still has a great look, but it's getting harder and harder for him to move in that ring. And I mean, that's just being honest.
Okay, then what about Damian Wayne, who is, I believe, just turned 50?
Damian Wayne is younger and he's still more agile. I like Damian Wayne too. He was recently on the show as well. And I would love to see Damian Wayne work with the National Wrestling Alliance, but I believe as the AIWF champion, I don't believe that's going to be something the NWA would be willing to do while he's holding another company's title.
I was meaning like as somebody who is older. There are instances where an older guy. This isn't the NHL where I'm listening to how over the hill and how broken down and everything Alexander Ovechkin should be when he's only like 32 years old. Made me feel absolutely horrible. I'm thinking here Ovechkin's like in his 50s or 40s at the least. But yeah, so there are wrestlers. Nick Bockwinkel just got better with age. He was like a fine wine.
Well, and then as we say all this, right? Recently, Sean Waltman put out on Facebook that he's looking to return to the ring in 2022. And one of the first people that said, hey, I would love to wrestle you was our former world's heavyweight champion, Adam Pearce. Adam Pearce and I are the same age, 43. He sure looks a hell of a lot better than I do at 43. And then Trevor Murdoch said, well, hey, Adam, if you're lacing them up one more time, I'd like to put my name in that hat to have a match with you for this NWA World Championship, which if that were ever to happen, I think I would have to go bankrupt trying to get to that event because I would have to be there to see that one last ride. I know it's not going to happen, and I know that's just hearsay, and it's fun to talk about because they're all good buddies, but I wouldn't mind seeing a 43-year-old Adam Pearce who hasn't been in the ring professionally in about 6 years. I'd pay to see him wrestle Trevor Murdoch right now.
But that's just it. You're paying to see an older guy because of something that it is something you want to say. You want to see. I mean, there are older wrestlers that could still go and can still draw. Yes, there are. I just read what Kevin Frazier said, but that made me laugh hysterically.
Retire all the 50-plus besides Wayne because he's too scared to tell him that. And, you know, Damian Wayne's a bad dude. They called him the Mid-Atlantic Badass for a reason.
But, you know, even with Damian Wayne, and look, there's a difference between saying they should wrestle and putting titles on them. I mean, you know, they put titles on Goldberg at 50 and 50, something like that. Wasn't overly thrilled with that. But, I mean, you know, I love Damian Wayne. Nobody wanted them to put the NWA title on Damian Wayne more than me. And if, you know, Billy Corgan under hypnosis was forced to put, you know, to say, I want to put the title on Damian Wayne, I would most likely look the other direction. But, you know, I don't know that I'm as into the idea of him winning the title today as I was when he was supposed to win the title.
Yeah, and I agree with that for sure.
And, you know, so let's understand and I do think there's a time when it does become a little bit ridiculous. I do think there's a time when it does cause you to fail to suspend your disbelief. I mean, we can talk about how they can go and everything like that. You know, look, Nick Bockwinkel's great, but I hated his last world title reign. I thought it sucked. And I had a hard time. I had a hard time believing him as champion at that point. And, you know, of course, the AWA whole sucked by then. And it's just, you know, like everything, you kind of got to help me with stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I watched Ken Shamrock because it was on cable TV and I had the channels, you know, fight 2 times and lose as a 50-something-year-old person against Chemo Slice and Royce Gracie. And it's like, God, they weren't good matches.
No.
You know, they weren't good. They weren't entertaining. And I never wanted to see them again. And I guess finally Bellator got the message and stopped, you know, booking that type of crap. You know, there comes a, I mean, look, you can find on YouTube, you can, or at least you used to be able to find Ric Flair versus Pat O'Connor right after Flair won the title in either late 81 or early 82. And, you know, Connor looked like grandpa. And it wasn't a good-looking thing at all.
Well, I mean, just even, you could even go back to like just a few years ago after Flair had already retired and Hogan was more or less retired. And then they did that show in Australia where they both bled like buckets of blood. And it just looked like 2 grandpas fighting over the last chicken wing at a Hooters. It just didn't look good. It didn't look good. And for 2 guys who were the icons of the sport of their era, I mean, it gets kind of sad to see these guys still, you know, there is a time to let go. And, you know, I mean, Terry McDermott said, hey, Mike Jackson is 70, he can still walk the ropes. That dude is supernatural. There's something eerie about that guy, but that's one of the rare few. I mean, when we at the Crockett Cup 2019, seeing Dem Boys versus the Rock and Roll Express was just, I felt like I was watching the geriatrics getting beaten up by the young kids, and it didn't make me feel good. It wasn't fun.
Well, let me start off real quick from Mike Jackson. He was 70 in 1984. And then they also mentioned Wahoo. Wahoo looked exactly the same at 25 that he did at 55.
Yeah, but he didn't walk as well. I mean, you know, hey, look, Mike Jackson walked the ropes at 70 when he's holding somebody's hand who's counterbalancing his weight to go against the thing. Fine. Yay, hooray. Put Mike Jackson in there with a wrestler. Anybody have a wrestling match, a real wrestling match, amateur, Greco-Roman, folk style, whatever. Mike Jackson's going to get his ass kicked. All right? You know, okay, he can walk the ropes. That shows that wrestling's bullshit. that Jerry Lawler, oh, he can still go. He can go better than 90% of the wrestlers out there on the independents today. Well, God, all that says is that 90% of the wrestlers out in the independents today really suck and don't look better than a 70-year-old man. That's not a compliment to Lawler. That's an insult to every other wrestler.
I just want to point out that James H. Jackson, our buddy James, says Mike Jackson needs a partner to take on the Young Bucks, so it could be the Old Bucks versus the Young Bucks. And I'm going to go ahead and volunteer George South, who's still wrestling, to be that partner, the Old Bucks versus the Young Bucks.
And the Young Bucks aren't that young anymore.
No, they aren't. Father Time catches us all, I'll tell you that much.
One of the Young Bucks has a worse hairline than I do.
That's saying something. See, Matt's 36. I mean, and 32, which, you know, no, those aren't old ages. Those are standard wrestling champion ages. But, you know, the concept that they're still young, exciting, upcoming talent should kind of go away.
Yeah, the Young Bucks should just go away.
Well, true. But, I mean, really, at this point, they should drop the name and just go by Matt and Nick Jackson.
Or the Hardley Boys. I like that one.
Hardley Boys are great for me. Put them. I want to put them in the ring with the Briscoes with a Briscoe style match.
So, okay, I want to point out one thing, and then I want to move on.
No.
DKM, the highest compliment you'll ever receive from our pal Kevin is DK for once is 100% correct.
Love you too, Kevin.
With that, I do want to change gears a bit because DK and I spoke about this offline, and I think it'd be a good discussion for us to have here as we wind down to the end of this 2021 run for this podcast as we end the year. Of course, we all know what happened with Ring of Honor. The announcement was made in early November that they were going to be shutting down at the end of the year. The idea was that they were going to have one final title match. It was supposed to be Bandito defending against Jonathan Gresham. However, Bandito had a health issue, which I think we believe it was COVID, or maybe.
Oh no, he said it was COVID. So
okay, fair enough. I just don't want to violate any it was a HIPAA code or whatever that is.
Right.
So he was unable to defend the title. They had a one-off with Jay Lethal. Was it Jay Lethal? Yes, it was Jay Lethal against Jonathan Gresham for the Ring of Honor title, the original belt that Kerry Silken had made for the promotion back in the day. It was a really feel-good moment. Jonathan Gresham, the pure wrestler, that really the kind of wrestler you want to represent Ring of Honor, wins that title. It's a very meaningful moment because, again, Jonathan Gresham is a guy who's been with the company for a while, and that title meant so much to him that was his goal. That's what he wanted. And so you have this new Ring of Honor World Champion in Jonathan Gresham. Promotion is now officially on hiatus. We won't know until April what their next move will be. But Jonathan Gresham is still your Ring of Honor World Champion, and he's set to defend the title not only in Game Changer Wrestling, but he's also set to defend the title in Impact, I believe, at their next pay-per-view. And now you've got Bandito, who never lost the title, who still is in possession of his Ring of Honor title. He's now out there setting up defenses for that title. And DK, you know a little bit more about it than I do, but how does that make – I mean – what do you think about that? I would like to hear Jaden's point of view. Of course, DK, I want you to say your piece too, but what do you think of having two Ring of Honor World Champions? Does that hurt the legacy of Ring of Honor? And do you feel like that could have any negative impact on what the NWA is doing? I know it's kind of a stretch, but I'm trying to tie it all in. We'll go with you first, DK.
Yeah, we talked about it, and it's just weird to me that a promotion that we still honestly don't know what its future is. I mean, there's a new rumor every day. They want to sell it. Tony Khan wants to buy it. They want to sell their library. They do. They don't. They might. Everything separate. You know, there's a new rumor every day. The only thing we know is that as of now, they're still planning to come back, and publicly. That's what's being said publicly. And so, two champions out there defending their title. Well, it could be good if there's a high chance that there will be a unification match when they come back. If there's not going to be a unification match when they come back, because, I mean, let's be honest, basically everybody has to be renegotiated with.
Right.
You know, so, and I'm not expecting large amounts of money to be thrown into anybody.
No, I wouldn't either.
So then the question is, you know, what happens if Bandito just never comes back? You know, does he defend I'm assuming Gresham's coming back. And I don't know about Bandito. I'm a little bit conflicted. I don't think it's good for wrestling in general. I guess it keeps ROH's name out there still, and there's still something to talk about. Of course, there's already talk that WWE is interested in their women's champion.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh, yeah. Roxy 19 was trained by Booker T. So I think she might be 20 now. I don't know. But yeah, she fits the young, hip, has followers model that apparently WWE likes. They're going after people who have large social media presence. And so, but apparently she is on the list of people that like to see, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, if they don't come knocking for her once she's officially off contract. And if she's not already.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. I think the only effect that this has on the NWA would be if the NWA champion was trying to get bookings and indie promotions or whatever, which I'm not really seeing any big sign of right now. But if he was, it'd just be one more competitor out there. Because really, and nothing against Trevor Murdoch, but right now, Jonathan Gresham's probably about as over as he's ever going to get. Bandito has a background that makes him an appeal to several promotions, and he's got that flippy style that a lot of people like. So, I mean, that's the only harm I would see for the NWA is that if you're trying to get Trevor Murdoch out there, you now have competition against two guys that are kind of the antithesis of Trevor Murdoch. So,
in opposite ways too, antithesis.
Yeah, in opposite ways, and that you have the highly technical wrestler, and then the
high flying wrestler,
high flying flippy dude. Now, I do have an interesting question that I want Jaden to
Wait.
And-
We didn't get
I want-
Jaden's take on that.
What?
We didn't get Jaden's take on it.
I know. Let me finish my conversation.
There
Well, that's kind of rude. So anyway, so Jaden answered Jay's question about the 2 titles, but then there was a controversy with, a go, and saying something about Jonathan Gresham reminds him of when Hornswoggle won the cruiserweight title. And Gresham, great technical wrestler, 5'4", probably 150 pounds. How is he as far as being a convincing world champion?
Gresham might be 5'4", but as many people say, they've been in the ring with him, and then they never even consider him to be 5'4" when they see him in the ring. And look at the difference between him and Adam Cole. They're about the same height. I think Gresham actually has muscle over Adam Cole right now, but Adam Cole is seen as was at least at one time before he started doing all the comedy stupid bullshit. He was considered a major star in both Ring of Honor and WWE's NXT, and Gresham looks like 3 times the size of him, even though they're both the same height, just because of pure muscular development.
Adam Cole is billed at 5'11". Gresham's billed at 5'4". I would say at most that Cole will be 5'9". So, I mean, there's still 5 to 7 inch difference between the two of them.
Yeah, but the weight-wise, I think Gresham actually outweighs him, and is way more muscular.
Could be. The one thing I did notice was that Cole, when he was in the ring with Orange Cassidy, was that they were about the same size as far as weight.
Being bulimic.
Yeah, and so anyway, it's just a question. I mean, for out there, but go ahead and answer the question on the 2 titles.
By the way, did you like how I had the Gresham video playing? Did you guys see that? You like that?
Yes, I did. No, you didn't like it, or no, you didn't see it?
I'll pull it back up because that's the kind of guy I am. But go ahead and keep talking, Jane. I'll get it going. Don't you worry about that.
Well, as for Wake Me Up Before You Go, he's a guy who's strong. He's big. He's got good size, but nobody's paying to see him right now. People pay to see Gresham. He is smaller, but when you have that much intensity, when you have that much size, and a lot of wrestlers even said they've been in the ring with him, they know he's 5'4", but until somebody said something, they never even dawned on him that he's 5'4". If you could have the right believability, I mean, I hate that stupid double forearm back and forth. That is so stupid. But if you have the believability, if you have the size, if you have the intensity, I remember when everybody said Chris Benoit was too small. I remember when everybody said Eddie Guerrero was too small. I remember when people said Brad Armstrong was too small, and he was taller than all of them combined. But if you have it right, if you have something special, then that could be marketed. Should he be a heavyweight champion in Ring of Honor, except for maybe Samoa Joe and 1 or 2 others? He's no bigger or smaller than just about half of the damn roster they have anyway.
See, I don't know that I fully agree with that. I mean, Ring of Honor guys have never been big, like you said, except for maybe Joe or that. Was it Nigel?
PCO.
Roosh was a little bit bigger than their average one. But, look, the very first thing I've ever thought when I've seen Jonathan Gresham is he's short. And that he's very short, and it's very hard for me to buy into. Now, I'm not saying the guy doesn't have talent. That's not what I'm saying. But, it was kind of like when Layla Hirsch was going to go against Camille.
That perfect.
I mean, we can all argue whether in a real fight who would win. They're not trained the same. They're not, whatever. but this isn't a real fight. This is wrestling. Looks do matter. And when I see Gresham, I go short, small guy, shorter and smaller than the average ROH guy, who's already short and small. He's got some bulk, but that doesn't necessarily translate into in him weighing a lot more, or even with some of the taller guys. So there goes Jay's camera.
That's the best he's ever looked.
That's true. F4.
The F4
he can't do an F5, but he can do an F4.
I don't think he can do the figure 4 either.
Oh no, I can.
But you know what? As for the double champion, in every other combat sport, there's been interim champions. Boxing, mixed martial arts, kickboxing. Yes, some people go.
But that's not the way they're promoting this.
I know, but do you remember when Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon? Shawn Michaels lost the smile or whatever it was, and he was no longer Intercontinental Champion. Razor Ramon won that match, and then Shawn Michaels came back with the belt. I cared more about that ladder match than almost anything else on that pay-per-view, except for maybe Brett versus Owen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how much was it that the title was at the stake in being unified, and how much of it was that you want to see Razor and Shawn?
It was an entire package. The ladder match, the championships, Razor and Shawn. It was an entire package.
They just did the same thing with Sami Zayn.
Yeah, I mean, not as well, but they did. Right now, look at the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiator, South Jersey's #1 wrestling promotion.
Do I have to?
Yes, and you do, and you like it, so I don't want to hear that. Breaker was injured, couldn't defend the championship. Ray Jazz won the interim championship. Breaker couldn't be there for injury, couldn't be there to defend the championship. So Ray Jazz won it by forfeit to unify the championship. Now Breaker's going to be there on February 26th at the Max Fit Sports Center, located at 240 Delsey Drive South in beautiful uptown Glassboro, New Jersey. So we're going to see that match finally, and everybody's anticipating. It's one of the most anticipated matches in Dog. A lot of people are already talking about getting tickets, COVID pending. So I think that's already got something going on. It does happen. That happened with UFC, with Brock Lesnar beating Randy Couture for the interim champion, or for the main championship, and then the interim champion just happened to beat Brock Lesnar before in a championship defense, and that was I just had his name and I forgot it. But yeah, what was that? Frank Mir. Frank Mir and Lesnar, that ended up being the most anticipated match in history, if promoted right. And I think they just kind of honestly lucked into it. Yeah, they may not have planned it, but they lucked into this, and maybe it's something that'll actually maybe light a fire under Ring of Honor and start them on a whole new trend.
Hey, Jaden.
Yes.
How big is Ray J and how big is Breaker?
Ray Jazz is 5'7", Breaker is 5'8". Ray Jazz is probably legitimately around 205, 210 pounds, but he's solid like a brick house.
If you haven't seen this kid, Ray Jazz, please search him out. Look for Dog Wrestling and look for Ray Jazz, because that kid. And I'm sorry, I don't know how old he is, but he looks young.
Oh, he's young.
He looks like a total package, honestly.
He looks and moves like an athlete.
For sure.
Oh, he's 100% an athlete.
And Breaker Morant is a South Philly tough guy. Say what you will. It's Breaker did attack Ray Jazz. 5'8".
But how much?
Probably, now that he's a little out of shape, probably around 230. I'm not gonna lie, but that's what happens when you get injured. It happens. COVID didn't help. I gained a bunch of weight because of COVID. Thank you. I lost a lot of it, but I found some of it.
I'm 5'7" and 220, and I had gotten down under 200 pounds before COVID.
Yeah, I know how tough that is. But that's going to be a great match. I think if only J Cal could pull up that match between Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators heavyweight champion Ray Jazz defending against maybe say Rhett Titus or Dirty Money, so we could see it in the background. So we could see. But Ray Jazz is great. I think he's actually. I still swear to this day he's Nunzio's illegitimate son, little Guido.
Let me see if I can do that. I don't know if I can, but I will try.
He even has a different type of finisher that I wasn't sure what I thought of at first, but I've come to like it.
It literally happens. That finisher was born at the Rowan event when he was against former MMA fighter Matt Mikowski. It was a timing issue that became a finisher, and next thing you know, it's been his finisher ever since. And it's unique, and it's different, and it's an actual pin attempt. It's not necessarily a finishing hold for power or hitting a move that's devastating. It's just using leverage and agility to catch somebody. And it's a lot better than a schoolboy or regular roll-up that all independent wrestlers do after hitting 10,000 other finishers. Am I wrong?
Roll-ups.
If it's done once in an absolute while to surprise a wrestler, fine. If it's done after you hit a pile driver and a power bomb and a superplex and a Canadian destroyer and a neck breaker and another power bomb and a bulldog and then 12 other flippy finishers and then hit a roll up, then it's stupid.
Is it do you guys see it? Did it pop up?
Yeah, there's Dirty Money in the Ring, former Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators heavyweight champion, the longest reigning Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators heavyweight champion, the most prolific Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators heavyweight champion, and here comes Ray Jazz.
So
hey, that's a nice belt.
I'm going to fast forward it a little bit. We'll get a little bit of this match going, but we can keep talking. But just maybe a little bit more fast forward. But yeah, that kid is certainly built. And if you guys follow, if you check him out on social media, he is certainly. You can see some of the drills he does and some of the training he does. The guy he is a legitimate athlete. He's built. That dude is double tough, and I certainly enjoy watching him wrestle. He's a guy that I know the NWA isn't actively pursuing talent out of the New Jersey area. Rhett Titus, Colby Carino, Austin Aries, but maybe Ray Jazz would be a guy that maybe the NWA could look into down the road in that junior heavyweight division.
Let me give you a little bit of his credentials. He graduated from New York University on an amateur wrestling scholarship. He is a former NCAA wrestler. He is a training partner with NCAA champion Anthony Ashnault out of Rutgers University. While he did go to college in New York. He is a New Jersey boy. And New Jersey, it must be all the pollution. It definitely can't be all the vegetables, but it's definitely known as a wrestling state. Only Oklahoma is known more to be a state for amateur wrestling and putting out world-class amateur wrestlers. Don't forget, Bob Backlund made his name in amateur wrestling in New Jersey amateur wrestling times. A lot of Olympic wrestlers have come from New Jersey. So he's very, very good and talented in the ring. He's been trained by some of the greatest wrestlers around. He's been in the ring. He had an excellent scientific pure wrestling match against Rhett Titus. He's been in there against former MMA fighter Matt Mikowski. He's wrestled a lot of the top wrestlers in this area, like Bobby Fish. He's recently been in the ring with. He's been in the ring with. I can't think of his name now. I keep wanting to say. What was his name? Fred Rosser. That's it. Fred Rosser, another New Jersey wrestler. He's been in the ring with him. He's been in the ring with a lot of the top talent out there, and he's so very good inside that ring. This was Dirty Money's first match back after a serious knee injury. And you can see Dirty Money is usually in spectacular shape. He's a little not quite, I can't say he's out of shape. He's in better shape than I am right now. But normally he's got like a six-pack abs going. But still, he was an excellent wrestler. Former WWE developmental guy, wrestled all over the NWA. So that match was really, really good. If you want to check it out, go to the Dog YouTube page. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share.
And
Hey, guys.
I'll put that link in here so that everyone can check that out.
I just put a match in that is actually Ray Jazz versus Breaker when Breaker was defending the title.
Yes.
So we get the rematch coming up where Ray Jazz is going to be the defending champion. So
The only match Ray Jazz has lost in Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators is against Breaker Morant after wrestling an opening match and winning a Battle Royal.
So that was a heck of a lot more talk on Ray Jazz than I think any of us anticipated going into the show. Maybe not, Jaden.
it was a good conversation. Let's just say that we all know my opinion when it comes to wrestling, and I don't hide it. And so I really enjoy when Jaden shares with us the dog things with like Ray Jazz, Breaker, and some of them, because they put on some really good wrestling matches there. Not the sports entertainment. He puts on some really good wrestling matches. So, hat tip to Dr. Z and whoever the guy is that replaced Jaden when Dr. Z fired him and so forth.
I've never been fired. I've just been doing the position. I have doing what I've always been doing, and I'm the scout of talent. And Jim Molyneux of ECW fame is the matchmaker. He's the one who puts together the great matches. Dr. Zirconium is the captain who likes to run the ship. He's not just he's a doctor and a captain apparently, and he's really put together some amazing wrestlers. I mean, almost everybody on the dog roster serious except for Patch, and almost everybody on they're loaded with a whole bunch of really great, talented professional wrestlers. And Daredevil Dave Dahl are going to be booked.
I knew that was coming. Well, hey, we could sit here and talk about dog all day, but we have to call this a night because we are at 2 hours, and that's officially, an hour and 55 minutes more than I care to hear myself speak. So we're going to wrap it up. Again, we do appreciate you guys checking us out. We did roughly 52 episodes of the show this year, and whether it was Jaden or Kevin or just DK and myself or just Kevin and myself or even the one time that it was just me, we do appreciate you guys being a part of this every weekend, week out. It's some of the most fun I have all week. You guys have been so kind to share your Thursday evenings with us, and we do appreciate you doing that. If you would really like to support this podcast, make sure you give us a thumbs up, like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you haven't subscribed already, hopefully the show convinced you to do so. And if you want to support us financially, you can do that. The merch link is in the video description. Just head on down there and pick up a shirt if you like, or a baseball cap like this guy right here.
To quote Kevin Nash, buy the shirt.
Yeah, I should get one of those, right? Jaden, if the folks want to follow you on the socials, how can they do that?
I don't have them.
Oh.
No. Dog has them, and I have no idea what they are. I know you can talk to Dr. Lawrence Zirconium on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and I think I said Facebook already. I think we have a TikTok that we don't use. I know we still got a MySpace, I think.
If you go to Dog Pro Wrestling, I'm sure you can find those links, dogprowrestling.com. And then,
yeah, I know that one. DAWG.
DAWG, like a real G. And then DKM, if the folks want to follow you on socials, how can they do that?
Wrestling related, follow me on Twitter at DKMFWTX. You can get my thoughts on wrestling, or at least the stuff that I retweet. You can see some of the stuff I retweet referring to DC Comics and their universe, and you'll occasionally get a political view, especially when people say stupid things.
So all the time, huh?
Basically, yes.
Well, that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We'll be back 2022, and hopefully we'll have a lot of fun stuff to talk about in the new year. Until then, we'll see you guys at the matches.
We thank you for tuning into the Alliance Blog Podcast, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you won't miss any future episodes? We'd also like to remind you that we do a live stream every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on YouTube at The Alliance Blog. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Twitch. Until next time, we are the Alliance.